Hello, I am Barry of Feldman Creative, and I am talking to the sales lion. So I'm excited about that. His name is Marcus Sheridan. Hello, Marcus.
Barry, what's up, brother? Excited to be here, and hopefully we'll have a good time today, a good conversation, and bring some value to the lives of your listeners.
That's the idea. That is the idea. And I've never talked to you and not had a good time and left more pumped up and more inspired than I was prior.
Great.
All right, so let's jump to the place. You've been ever so slightly warned about the questions I'm going to ask you today. Let's jump to the place where perhaps the market is. I don't want to give them too much credit, but the marketing person in a company is like, yeah, I get it. Content marketing, all that sounds good. Let's go. I understand the benefits. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt there that they do of content marketing. I want to achieve those results. You and I know a big challenge lies ahead. The vision needs to be shared. You have recognized that. I have recognized that. And you have created a solution to that, and that is a content marketing workshop. I read a piece. You sort of ebooked an article or two or three to make that clear and explain the concept. And so that's where we are. That's what I want to talk to you about today. So what's the objective of a content marketing workshop?
Well, you know, the workshop all started with a CMO, a Chief Marketing Officer, that came to me, whose name was Krista Catrola. And she's really just an amazing individual. And she works for a company called Block Imaging. Now, Block Imaging, what they do is they do refurbished medical imaging equipment. So they'll take an old MRI machine, they'll refurb it after it's been put out to pasture, and they'll sell it to a hospital or a health organization that can't necessarily afford a new one. Okay, because a new MRI costs like $1 million. Marcus, I want to embrace this philosophy of content marketing. Like we say, they ask, you answer. We want to be teachers. I want to do all these things, but the problem is I'm not a subject matter expert. But I go to my salespeople, I go to management, and I say, I need your help. And they say, we don't have the time for that. Or, we're in sales, Krista. That's not what we do. And so she came to me and she said a statement that would change my life, Barry. She said, Marcus, I need you to come here and convince all my salespeople that they want to help me with content marketing. And that question would lead to what was my first major workshop that I gave on content marketing, and would lead me down this course of realizing that every company that wants to be great at involving their employees, which is what I call insourcing, in other words, using your existing staff to help you with this effort versus trying to get everybody else outside of your company, right? If you want to be great at content, if you want to have a culture of insourcing and a culture of content, you better start off on the same page, sharing the same vision. And second part to this. So we've all heard about Simon Sinek, start with why, golden circle, right? And Simon did a good job explaining really what is the problem with content marketing. Because if you go to a salesperson and they don't understand the what, the how, and the why of what you've just explained to them, or anybody in an organization for that matter, they're not going to buy in. It's not going to be a culture. And so the core purpose to a great workshop anytime is going to be self-discovery for that person, understanding the what, the how, and the why of that thing. And in this case, content marketing. And oh, by the way, we probably don't call it content marketing because that's the first big problem, is we're saying it the wrong way, because most people cannot form a relationship with the phrase content marketing.
Why?
Well, think about it. I mean, so we use phrases, and you're so good with words. You understand this, Barry. Words matter. And words can mean the difference between total buy-in and somebody being turned off or never paying attention to it in the first place. So in other words, this is what happens at marketing events. So we have events like Inbound and Content Marketing World and things like this, where CMOs and marketing peeps, they get fired up, then they go back to the office and they tell everybody, you know, we need to start blogging. We need to start producing content. Let's do this content marketing. It could make a huge impact on our company. And nobody gets it. Nobody gets it because they're presenting it the wrong way. You can't go to a CEO and say, you know what, I really think we should be blogging. I think that's going to make a big difference. It doesn't work that way. I've seen it too many times. This is what you have to do. If you go to a CEO, and this is an example of a statement like when somebody says to me, because Barry, I know you're like me, you're constantly talking about this. The #1 email that I've gotten over the course of 5 years is not, Marcus, how do I generate more leads? That's number 2. That's number two. The number one is, Marcus, I know this stuff would work for my organization, but I can't get management to buy in. I can't get sales to buy in. This is the most prolific problem in the content marketing industry right now, and it starts with the way that we talk about it. What would happen, Barry, if a CMO or just a marketing person went to, let's say, the CEO and said a simple question: when people come to our website, do we solve their problems better than anybody else in the world? It's a really simple question. It's a really simple question. But when you ask that question, you're really talking about what content marketing is. Because if we break down the essence of what great content marketing is, it's four really simple things. You're obsessed with listening, and you understand exactly the way the prospect, the consumer, thinks it, feels it, and says it. You're obsessed with communication. That's number two. The communication has got to be perfectly clean. You say it in their words, cursive knowledge, right, that we talked about before, not the words of the business. You're obsessed with seeing yourself as a teacher, answering and being willing to answer everybody's questions versus ignoring the person that's raising their hand, which is the business, the individual, the prospect, the consumer that has a question. And then you are the helper. In other words, you see yourself as someone that helps solve people's problems. We're listeners, we're communicators, we're teachers, and we're helpers. We're not content marketers. We're not bloggers, because if we present it as such, you cannot form a relationship, an emotional connection with those words. And like I said, words matter.
All right, so you've got a internal champion, I suppose. That request was, I got to sell this. I got to sell it to my boss and my whole company. I understand at least enough to know that this workshop's a good idea. And so does that fly every time? I mean, do you ever get resistance then where we say, okay, sales lion's coming to your town, and when what you're really asking is everybody in the damn company has to plan on taking a couple days away from their job and meeting on this thing. It's an expensive proposition, no?
Well, see, I used to engage with companies that the buy-in was very, very up and down. Okay, in other words, it seemed to be the case where maybe the marketing person was on board, but this CEO was just wishy-washy and didn't really believe it. I stopped doing that, Barry. And I told, if I have to have a call with the CEO, I will. But I'm like, look, if you want to engage with me and my company, we have to have a workshop, because this is what works if you want to establish a true culture, if you want to be the best. And this is going to sound braggadocious for a second. I don't mean it to be, but we have had clients that have become big-time case studies in the inbound and content marketing space that other books are now talking about, simply because they followed these particular steps that we implement. And the biggest one, it's always that it starts with a workshop. I mean, if you look at Steve Jobs, when he would initiate a new campaign with Apple, he did a fireside chat. It's almost like a workshop, because he wanted to give everybody in the company a vision of, okay, this is what we've done, this is where we're going, this is your part, and this is your role. And of course it was a PR move, but it was a very much cultural move as well, even though he wasn't necessarily what some would consider a culture guy. He established an incredible culture at Apple. We have to do the same things if we're going to embrace an initiative like content marketing. But here's the thing. Over the past 6 months, Barry, I've been forced to study how we've been so successful getting this buy-in at these workshops, because I've seen workshops stink. In other words, I've seen agencies try to give a workshop, it stinks. And the reason is because they're going about it the wrong way. Here's something I did recently that completely changed for me, because we have started teaching agencies how to give these workshops. So we give workshops, but we teach agencies how to give a workshop. It's a fascinating business model that I didn't do before. And so it forced me to figure out, what were we doing in these workshops that was so successful? Well, the first thing I realized was this. Number one, over the course of 3 hours, and that's about how long a normal workshop lasts, we ask a minimum of 75 questions is what we ask to the audience, that we have an engaged conversation about. 75 set questions that we ask. The whole key to getting somebody to buy into content marketing is allowing them to discover on their own, Barry, what they already know to be true. Once they look in the mirror and say, that's exactly how I am. Yes, that's how I use the internet. Yes, this is what I expect when I buy something. Then you tell them, by the way, that's content marketing. And then it makes sense. Until, though, they have self-discovery, none of it works.
Yeah. I've seen you speak a number of times, and you have a way of doing that, making people realize it's sort of what we're doing here is organic. Probably best understood by you communicating that the goal is to teach. That people trust you as an authority in your field and will eventually, buy from you when you've educated them.
Well, I mean, so let me show you. Give me a quick example of how a lot of people present this, and they do it wrong, okay? Versus doing it right. So a lot of people might go into an organization and say, look, people buy completely differently today than they did yesterday. They're making decisions about your products before you ever even talk with them. Well, that is fine, and that's true, Barry, but that's not the best way to do that. Instead of that, you could go to an audience and you could say, before you say anything, you could just say something as simple as, so tell me one thing you buy completely differently today than you did 5 years ago. And so then all of a sudden people are going to start to think, and they're going to say things like, well, I buy my shoes differently. Well, what do you mean you buy your shoes differently? Well, I buy them online. So are you telling me you don't even try your shoes on first? No, I don't try them on. I don't try my shoes on first. If someone had told you 5 years ago that you would buy a pair of shoes without trying them on first, what would you have told them? I would have told them they were crazy. You would have. But something changed. What happened in that process? Well, this company called Zappos made it easy for me to make decisions, and they took away my fear. Absolutely. They took away your fear. That's great. That's an example of how you change. Somebody else give me an example. Okay, so that's a conversation I've had 100 times, right? Especially with females in the audience. It always goes just like that. But what's happening is they are setting themselves up to understand, yes, we have all changed as consumers. So you can either tell them they've changed, or they themselves can say, we've changed. But trust me, if they say it, it is way more effective.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to what I want to talk about next, because well, you'll see. I want to separate what marketers do from what the rest of the company is capable of doing. So you have a workshop, and that's why I asked you to do this interview with me. And you have a piece about it that breaks it down into eight components. What happens? It's in the agenda for the workshop, and I suppose that helps people understand where you're going and why, and how to get ready for it. And if time allows, I guess we could step through it, but we don't have a lot of time. So let's jump straight to number 6, where you write this about number 6, which is really, really interesting. So I'm quoting you here, and then I'm going to stop and have you fill in the blanks. You say the essence is very simple. Marketing should not be the digital voice of the company. Marketing does not have a finger on the pulse of clients and customers like the rest of the company does. Therefore, marketing's job from this point forward is to help the employees that actually deal with the customers produce content. So I want to hear you tell me about what takes place during section 6 of a workshop. It's such an exciting idea.
Well, you see, this is what you don't... When you go to give a workshop, everybody wants to feel important. Okay? So, getting back to this self-discovery, what we teach as a philosophy in my agency is that the company should be producing their content, and everybody should be involved in that process. It's called insourcing, right? And I mentioned that earlier. Well, if I go in front of 25 salespeople right now in an organization, if I just ask these questions, they're going to stumble upon this truth for themselves. Just here's how it looks. Okay, so generally speaking, this is the question. Generally speaking, which department of this company hears the most questions from prospects and from clients? And of course, everybody says, well, sales department does. Okay, good. And generally speaking, which department of the company has the best answers to those questions from these prospects and customers? Once again, sales says, sales does. Okay, great. That being said, right now, when it comes to your website, the thing that we've established that everybody is vetting before they ever talk to you, and we've already established that, by the way, in the workshop. When it comes to your website, which department of your company is responsible for listing the questions that prospects and customers buy? And then all of a sudden everybody says, I guess that's marketing. And then I say, and with all this messaging that's on that website that they're reading before they ever talk to you. Now, who's responsible for giving them the answers to all those questions on the website right now with your company? And of course, the answer is marketing. And that's when I say, so you tell me what's wrong with this picture. And that's when everybody says, well, marketing doesn't understand the business like we do. Of course they don't. Of course they don't. And so what's the solution? And once again, this is when they come out and say, well, the solution is we need to become involved with marketing and we need to tell them what to put on the website. And that's when you say, yes, you're exactly right. And they just committed themselves through a logical process of self-discovery that, hey, this is dumb the way that we're currently doing it, the way that most organizations doing it, and we need to be involved on the front end because we're the ones that are the true subject matter experts of the company. This applies as much to sales as it does to other industry, departments too, like engineering could be one, and sometimes customer service could be one, and so there's sometimes shipping could be one. You understand what I'm saying? But the point is, nobody thinks anybody else can explain what they do better than they themselves can do it. You need to help them realize that and get fired up for the fact that they're not actually explaining it. And everybody else in the world is hearing it from a secondary source, which that's ridiculous to many. And so this is how you get buy-in. You put it in terms that everybody can realize, my goodness, it's wrong the way that we have set up the business.
All right, well, this is an ironic question, I suppose. Does this have a deflating effect on the marketing people? Because
no, what's marketing's biggest complaint, Barry? Marketing's
resources?
Biggest complaint right now. That's right. Other than buy-in, it's resources. I don't have enough content. It's like, okay, well, you know, here's one of the questions I love to ask at a workshop. So you get all the salespeople in there, and you're like, okay, so how many emails do you guys send out? You all, how many emails do you send out a day? And so the average salesperson will say something like 20 or 30. I'm like, okay, so of those 20 or 30 emails that you send out a day, how many are addressing or answering a client's or a question's concerns, issues, worries, etc.? Like, how many are addressing that from a client or a customer? And they usually will say, well, almost all of them. And then I'll say something like, okay, let's just assume that there's only 10 emails that you're sending out a day that's addressing customer or client concerns, issues, worries, questions, etc. What's happening is now they're starting to realize, oh my goodness, we're already doing this whole thing we've been talking about the whole time. And then the next question is, what would happen if every time you answered or addressed a client's questions, concerns, worries, or issues on an email, what would happen if you BCC'd somebody in marketing? And of course, everybody all of a sudden is like, oh, gee, wow. I mean, and marketing is thinking, we would never complain about enough content again. You know, Barry, we've had companies add that one little simple click to emails, and they've been inundated in content going forward. I don't understand why we don't do this, man. One other requirement that we have is we require the marketing department has to go to the sales department's meetings. It's required. Because to me, going forward in 10 years, I don't think we're going to have a sales and marketing department any longer. That might sound crazy to some people. I think for the most part, in most organizations, at least 80 to 90%, it's going to be one. We might call it something else. We might just call it sales and marketing. I don't know what we're going to call it, but it's going to be one, okay? Because you're going to have so many salespeople that are producing content, they're producing video, they're doing all these things that are going on the site because so much is going to be digital, all these things. They're going to be way involved sooner, and so it's going to drastically change, and you have to help them see that in a workshop. But when it comes down to it, you got subject matter experts in every company, and people need to stand up and say, yeah, I am the one that should be talking about that.
Yeah, I propose, I guess, without the time to brainstorm that with you, it's sort of the new role of customer acquisition, right? Because the areas have gotten grayer between sales and marketing. So that question that I last asked you was
completely gray.
Yeah, it's kind of a setup because the marketers can take more credit for generating sales if they're doing content marketing correctly. They're qualifying people in advance. They're they're shooing away those that are disqualified or can't afford it or what have you. And you're saying the same is happening with sales, getting involved in setting the agenda. I mean, you've gone as far as saying really the sales department's outbox is our blog. Let's connect those two.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct, and that's why, and one could, and that leads us into like why CRM is important as well, because eventually your CRM is going to be tied directly back into your content marketing editorial calendar. I mean, they're going to be completely tied together.
Yeah,
whoever does it first is going to be crushing it.
Yeah, CRM, CMS. Sorry about the alphabet soup, folks, but that's getting fuzzy too, right? Like we see Salesforce is obviously a big leader in software of many kinds now, acquiring companies in the
Salesforce is going to be a content marketing tool. Period.
Yeah, because they're in the marketing automation space now. They've made those.
To the bank.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And I mean, there's other. And when you do a workshop, you have to jolt people. And so, in other words, we've all heard the studies that 70% of the buying decision, and this number fluctuates by a few percentage points, but 70% of the buying decision is made before first contact. In other words, before they talk to a salesperson, before they fill out the form on the website, before they have a conversation, right? I love talking about that number, Barry, at these events, because if you go to, let's say, a group of salespeople, and you say, okay, we can all agree that 70% of the buying decision is made before first contact. The next question is where it really gets interesting. And I love asking this in a room full of salespeople because it causes incredible discomfort at first. And you say, if this number is true, if 70% of the buying decision is truly made before they ever talk to you, which department of this company has a greater impact on the actual sale? Is it marketing or is it sales? And the moment somebody in sales has to have that little internal civil war with themselves, Barry, that's the moment they realize, I better get off the pot here and do something about it. I need to get involved with marketing because marketing is the new king. That's why marketers, if things stay the way they are in terms of the silos, in 10 years, marketers will be paid what salespeople are, and salespeople will get paid what marketers do.
All right, cool setup for the next question. Rather convenient, really, because I love this silo-busting conversation. And this is no longer about the workshop so much, but about the benefits of people getting educated, learning, and buying into content marketing up and down and across every department. And this is about a recent publication from the Altimeter Group, specifically Rebecca Lieb, being its author, wrote a piece about having a culture of content. So very much in line with what your workshops aim to accomplish. And she wrote this, and she's talking, you'll see, about how its effects spread far beyond the marketing department. So here's Rebecca, or the authors of that paper. Companies that evangelize, reinforce, and institutionalize the importance of content throughout and beyond the marketing organization are more successful not only across their marketing initiatives, but also with other internal and external success benchmarks such as sales, employee advocacy, customer service, audience engagement, thought leadership, and hiring. Interesting stuff, right?
Interesting stuff. Unfortunately, there's not nearly as many case studies out there as there should be at this point of this type of impact. I'm grateful to say that I've seen it. I know for a fact that we've had clients that have told us, sure, we've generated a ton more of traffic, leads, and sales through this. But really, the value in this for us was in recruiting. Because, especially if you look at it today, today's millennial, right? There's all these books on like millennials and how millennials make decisions and things. Well, millennials want to be, we'll just stereotype for a minute, because that's what all the books do. Yeah. They want to be a part of a cause. They want to research the snot out of something before engaging with it, right? And all these things. Well,
from Starbucks.
Yes, exactly, from Starbucks. And so millennials are going to vet the living heck out of your company before they contact you, assuming they're a prime recruit that could, take their choice as to where they want to go. And so they're using the internet to identify the companies they want to engage with versus the other way around, right? So just like sales and marketing are changing, recruiting is changing as well. Because now we've got the people, the recruitees coming after the recruiters, and they have a lot more leverage than they used to. And the key to this, in terms of giving them the vision of your company, making your company attractive, helping them see that you do have a vision, a mission, etc., is by this culture. Now, calling it a culture of content is nice and it's easy. It's very marketing though. You know, I've been saying for quite some time that at River Pools, the most important philosophical shift that we ever had was how we answered one simple question, that is, what do you do? Because when people ask me for 8 years of my life, Marcus, what do you do at River Pools? I say, well, we install fiberglass swimming pools. And then when we made this philosophical shift, I said, we are the best teachers in the world when it comes to fiberglass swimming pools. And we happen to install them as well. And because of that shift, that's the mentality for the company. But everybody in the company says, we're a teacher. This is what we do. So they take the time to explain things when it comes to customer service. When it comes to sales, they take the time to see themselves as teachers. When it comes to marketing, obviously, through what we've done with River Pools, that is the same thing. And so my point is really what we're talking about. The culture of content, to me, is a culture of teachers. That everybody has a teacher within. You're not going to ever hear somebody say, there is content within each one of us. That is not sexy to any person on earth that doesn't have an acronym, a marketing-based acronym next to their name. But if you say to somebody, there's a teacher within you that's waiting to come out, that is very appealing, that is very cultural, and that is something I can put my arms around and say, yes, I want to be a part of that.
Yep. You have wisdom. You're good at something. You share it with us, please. Teach me.
That's exactly.
So I know you got to go. I'll let you go with this question. I think there's a reason why you call yourself the sales lion. I actually never asked you what that reason is, but perhaps somebody dubbed you that. Oh, look at that. That's a little lion. What people don't know about Marcus, he's a bit of a lamb when he's not on, or when the camera's not pointing at him, or he's not on stage. But even when he is on stage, he's quickly off stage because, as you can see, it's very interactive. He does, the Socrates style of teaching. He asks a lot of questions, and nobody falls asleep on him because he's going to be right there in your face with a microphone. So let's talk about that before we leave, about your workshops. Besides evangelizing and teaching when you're there, I gotta believe that you're also inspiring. You're one of the first speakers I saw when I decided to be a content marketer, and I went to a conference about blogging, and there you were, and I left pumped up. Is that part and parcel with the workshop?
Well, it very much is. And when I close a workshop, Barry, it's the same way that you see me close at conferences. So like, let's say we're at a conference. I might ask as the final point of my keynote or talk, I might say, why did you come here? Why did you come here? And everybody says first, well, I wanted to improve my business. I want to get better at content marketing. That's not why you came to a content marketing conference. You came so that you could experience more financial peace in your life and do that which you value the most, whatever that thing is for you. You see, because I embrace the principles of content marketing and inbound marketing and becoming a teacher in our space, I was given my life back. I nearly lost my business. I got it back. I found financial peace in a period of hardship for our country. I was going to lose everything in terms of property, right? And I got that back, and it brought joy to my life. And it's given me more time than I've ever had previously to be with my 4 kids and with my wife. So for me, when we talk about content marketing, it's actually about time. It's about time. So in other words, if I go to a salesperson and if I say, I think blogging will help you, that will not work. But if I go to a salesperson and if I said to that person, would you like to spend less time at appointments answering the same questions over and over again? Everyone is going to say yes. And if you had more time, what would you do with that? They're going to say two things. They're going to say, I'd work with more qualified leads, and I'd spend more time with my family or doing that which I love, right? Something of that. Mm-hmm. And then as a marketer, you say, so if we could find a way to give you that, would you be interested? Now all of a sudden the game changes, because now we're getting to the core of the why. And the why that we do this, why we do content marketing is not about leads. We do content marketing because there's something within us that needs to come out. There's a teacher within, and we're all seeking more financial peace and more time in our life. That's why we do these things. And if your organization can realize that, if you can help them realize that, then it's going to be a very, very different conversation, and a culture just might be possible.
Yeah. I mean, you've done what marketers do. You sort of move the conversation from here to here, and you pointed at your torso there as you were telling that story. So good stuff, man. Thanks so much for answering these questions for us today. I know the people that tune in and listen to this video and watch the video are going to learn a lot. So thank you very much, Marcus.
Barry, my pleasure. And I just want to say, you, sir, are the best writer about content marketing on the web by far. And I appreciate all that you've done, and I certainly appreciate the time that we've had today. Thanks, brother.
I like that endorsement, man. You might see that somewhere online.
I think you are, and I'm not kidding when I say that.
Thank you very much, Marcus. Have a great holiday season with your family.
All right, brother.